Okay, to diagnose my problem after I did the oil change, I did my first inspection on it, and this is what I found. Okay, so far, when I lift my tire up, the tire, it jiggles back and forth. The other one's touching the ground, this one is not. See, as you can see, I'm moving it with my hand, back and forth. And it clicks each time when I move it back and forth. Now, what I did was, we're at the front of the car, going under. There's a few problems, but they're problems that I need to take care of. This has 190,000 miles, and obviously most typical cars after 90,000 miles, they have timing belts that go off and water pumps that go off, and obviously they've had this car serviced a few times. It came from a dealership. So, okay, here we'll start at the tire before we get into the transmission part. The tire that we just shook, here we're under it with me. This is a tire, I'm rocking it back and forth. And what it is, these front struts up here, I'll explain these later, which some of my struts are shocked, like they're shocked, all four of them. This is the spring coil that goes up. The shock connects right here. If you take this ball off the shock, this tire is flimsy. It'll be like completely, nothing's holding it on. It'd probably wobble back and forth while you're driving because it's not stable. This shock stabilizes it in somewhat ways. And this right here, it really doesn't do nothing. It is a brace, this V-joint. And anyways, if you ever notice when you take off your bolts around the rim, there's a center bolt. It's called a hubcap wheel bearing bolt, which is the center bolt. It's a bigger bolt, and it connects to the wheel bearing inside the CV shaft. This is a CV shaft, which looks like it's been replaced. Because you could tell, like, you know, these clamps right here are brand new, like almost new. And you got this tag on here. It's not rusted off. You have another one. And the CV shaft, if you look, I just went under the engine, the frame. This is a frame. This metal, solid metal. See, this V, it clamps into two places on the frame, which it does. Yes, it does. Anyways, this CV shaft has two boots. This is a boot right here. This black thing right here is a boot. And then there's the rod that the C-clamp is on. And there's another boot. If you don't, yeah, it's right there. It's right there, boot. Goes up to the boot. And then, as you notice, it goes into the cylinder thing, which is still, it goes into the transmission. And the transmission housing has 20 bolts around it, as you notice. And the transmission is located right under the oil pan. This is the oil pan, where you take your bolt off right here and drain your oil. And I don't want to explain it now. Don't ever do a transmission change unless you know for sure and you don't think you know. If you think you know, like it's just the same as oil, it is not. It will leave you without a car in 2 weeks, and all your gears will go out, except for neutral first and reverse. So don't do it unless you need tips. If you need tips on how to do a transmission change, notify me on Messenger, no matter what, Autopart, AutoZone, O'Reilly's, or anyone says. If you want to know the correct way, you know how I am and how I am as a person, I will tell you how to do it. It's very easy. Anyways, these things don't need to be changed unless after every 20,000 miles, and it's really helpful. Anyways, the CV shaft, back to the CV shaft. It goes through the transmission, right? And there's a rod in here. Now, if you uncover this pan here, 20 bolts on each side, all the way around, you still won't be able to get to it. Because it is up there in the transmission. It is up there. It's very, very flat inside here. It's just a filtration and a gasket that you would get if you bought the whole thing, and there's a filter that or gasket that goes around here. But pulling that filter off, which is about 30 to 40, 50% that's inside here. It's a filter that's big, and it comes off with a nipple, and a nipple that is aluminum, and it goes up, and that filter can break off in there. If it breaks off in there, you are screwed. I had a hard time. It was like taking a tweezer and trying to pull a fly out of your first broken eardrum in your ear, which you have 2 eardrums in your ear, and it died on the second one. If you lose both eardrums, you go completely deaf. If it only popped the first one, then it can regenerate itself. And human bodies and anatomy, if you read that up. I've had a June bug stuck in my ear once. Anyways, transmission, the CV shaft goes all the way across. Of course, the other CV shaft shall be bigger or whatnot. And it goes to the other tire here. And if you turn the wheel, you can listen to the transmission from left to right. And let's have a moment of silence here real quick. It's inside the housing up there, and it turns. Why turn the wheel? See, it's turning. It turns there, inside, and now we're going to click it. It goes to the other side. Maybe it's supposed to sound like that, but I have a problem with the power steering, which I'll show you the power steering real quick. And I checked the power steering. The rack and pinion, there's also another key component for the power steering and such, which the rack and pinion is connected here. Remember that V thing we were talking about? We are right under it. It's right here. And the V, one of the V arms here, the other side. And the V, and not the V arm, but the rack and pinion. This is a rack and pinion. It's connected to the wheel here, under the wheel. And here's another one, another bolt. They go back to the firewall here. And here's a boot housing. And it runs on the firewall here. It's like on there about as big as my hand, and it runs back here, and it connects to the other side right on the tire. 2 things. The shock absorber is something else. Those 2 things, shock absorbers hold the tire steady and straight. But anyways, what does the rack and pinion do? The rack and pinion connects up into the steering wheel and goes into the steering wheel right here, and it pumps fluid through here. This is the power steering pulley, power steering pump. Power steering pump has 2 hoses, power steering cap reservoir, power steering cap reservoir, which is a little low, but once your car is running, you do not want to take this off because it has to run under pressure. You got pressure hoses, one right here. And look, as you can see, it is very, 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 there's it, pressure hose. Pressure hose usually have this, and power steering pump too. They usually have these C-clamps, but they also have these things too. So we gotta figure out which way this goes. So it goes through the side housing. So it goes, and yes, one of them runs through. You got 2. Minus the outer part runs to whatever. Anyways, it was like towards the radiator here, but it's not. Maybe, but it's see, as we see, it's a little greasy, and as you see, it needs replaced, but not very big, because look at the color of it, the duration of the rust and stuff. It's been there for a long time. And anyways, this pulley here, you can get this whole piece together. But how do I know it's power steering? Because usually some cars have a power steering tank and pump, one of these, together. and they're together on a V6, and they sit up here, and they're both together, you know. Which I want to get me a purple one of these flywheels. I don't know why, but to get one of these, this pump, it runs here. As you know, this don't need replaced because it's not leaking, and it's in this tank. So the tank is separate. They just like extended the tank for more room, obviously, and my alternator's down there. For some reason, I have to take this tire out, or I have to take off a bunch of other pieces. Hopefully not the engine mount. Engine mount don't look like it's on this side. No, it's not. Wish there is an engine mount here. But listen, I'm not talking about that. Anyways, power steering pump. The other part of it, pump. This little piece right here also is probably a part of it, but it's a different part because it's to buy another piece. I have not even described what that is yet, and I couldn't tell you right off back because I'm trying to think about other power steering pumps, and I can't get it off the top of my head. So whatever this is, it goes towards between the pieces of the rack and pinion and the pump, whatever that piece is. And the rack and pinion connects to the steering column, which you can get a steering column is a whole different part, steering column all the way up to the steering wheel, and it connects into it, and it changes different directions. No, your steering column does not run into the transmission. So rack and pinion, etc., to the tires of your CB shaft is a different part. Rack and pinions connect to those two joints I told you on this side, and your CB shaft with your wheel bearings. Wheel bearings will make your tires wobble when you drive. Wheel bearings are things that are at the center of your cap here. Wheel bearings. They got bearings in it. They come in two disc shapes, and they should never separate. They're like two discs. Like if I large in the size, this is way large. There's like two of these, lid to lid. And inside there's bearings in it, like little ball bearings, and they spin together like this. They should never separate, because if they separate, the only thing that holds your car on is your shocks and your calipers, which your calipers really ain't nothing holding your calipers on, but yeah. So the struts, that, and what can cause it? These are your shock absorbers, your struts, your front struts on both sides. Your struts come up here. They're bolted by 3. They're almost indestructible, but mine makes a lot of rattle noises, like when I hit a bump or something, really easy. And it means they're shocked. I need new socks, which they call them socks, but they're called struts. That's what they're called. They're called struts, front and rear struts, but I call them socks. Socks, shoes, or your calipers, and rims and tires. They're just called rims and tires, and a lingo. And anyways, the struts, what they do, there's one bolt like I showed you, right? If that wasn't on, you can move the whole caliper and disc, the shoes and the disc, all up jaggedy anywhere, until those rack and pinion bolts, those 2 bolts I showed you on that runs to the back, which this could affect a lot of other things, but those are your basic, stand on your 4s there, just like the AC and heating. And AC and heating, meaning it runs through not just your heating in your car or your cooling in your car, which it does a lot for that, as in people think your compressor or whatever. No, they also run through these things called a radiator and everything else to keep it cool. The Freon does keep it cold, but it plays a lot of other parts. It connects, because with AC and heating and cooling, you notice they have a radiator. And a radiator, let me point out a part of a house. A house has a radiator, coil fan, all that too, right there too. And the AC component in the AC Freon bottle is in there. or in the outside. Boom. AC Freon. If you touch it, it is cold. I mean, this one's on the outside, but they're usually on the inside of here at the corner base. So there you go. There you have it. And if you didn't notice, inside also as well, I mean, the radiator, they usually have a heater, but that's the heater's in the basement. So your heater and AC unit, AC and cooling, runs through your radiator. Your radiator with your radiated fluid, it runs through your system of your whole entire engine, like the veins in your body, like your veins inside your whole entire human body and a human anatomy. It runs through them, and they got gaskets to keep that separated when you take apart the engine block by block all the way down. I have, because I've used 3 jacks and without a cherry picker or whatever, and it took me 3 days to change the whole head gasket throughout the whole car. That's very complicated, and it's like a doctor or whatever they say. Everything has to be worked by torques and specs too, just to throw that out there too. Anyways, that's what I inspected. There is a heater core right here. It looks like a radiator, but there's also a radiator in front of that. 2 fans, keep it cool. So we need a power steering next to the agenda. It's not bad until it's like, you've been running for a while, but when you start it, you might hear that like that whining noise, like a baby crying in the morning. Well, that's your whole power steering, step by step, or a way I informatively explained it, or tedious different details. There you go.